morning, members. It's 10 o'clock, so we'll start today's planning meeting. Before we start the meeting in earnest, I just need to read out the following paragraph. And that is that I would like to remind everyone present at the meeting that it will be broadcast live on the internet and will be available for repeated viewing for 12 months. If you're seated in this room, you are deemed to be consenting to being filmed, and any contributions to the meeting will be recorded and broadcast. Okay, thank you. And we'll move on to item number 1, please, which is apologies. Zach?
Yeah, good morning, Chairman. I've received apologies from Councillor Pritchard, Councillor Afsar, Councillor Snape, Councillor Hudson, Councillor Oates and Councillor Lawson.
Thank you. We've still got enough members to be quorum, so that's important. We'll move on, please, to item number 2. And has anyone got any declarations of interest or has informed us of any declarations of interest? No? Okay. And we'll move on to item 3, which is the minutes. I've got a copy here, thanks.
Move the chair.
Minutes for the meeting of the 2nd December 2021, and that's been moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Cox. Are we in agreement? Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. And we'll move on to item number 4, applications for permission. And the first one is something that we don't get very often, but a correction to a report on an item at the last meeting, which was Newbold Quarry, Litchfield Road, Barton under Needwood. Mike?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, this is a short report to correct an error in my December report on an application to vary the current permission at Newbold Quarry to extend the hours and increase the output. As you can see on the slide, that's the description of the proposed development. I will begin by briefly recapping on the main points of my previous report, which is appended to this report, starting at page 12 in the agenda pack. Sorry, one slide too many. There we go. So just as a reminder for members who were here last time and those who weren't, as a benefit for you, Newbold Quarry lies to the southwest of Burton, near Taton Hill, Dunstall and Barton under Needwood, and it is immediately to the east of the A38. That should be west of the A38, looking at that slide, so apologies for that. That's another mistake. So the proposals, again, are to increase output at the quarry to 1.4 million tonnes per annum by extending the operating hours for mineral extraction in phases 4 and 5, which are the remaining phases of the quarry, and processing of mineral up to 10 o'clock at night on weekdays. They also want to extend the maintenance period to 24 hours per day on weekdays and on a Saturday. And they also want to allow 5 lorries to park up after 7 o'clock on weekdays and after 4 o'clock on a Saturday. They would operate to lower noise limits during these extended hours for mineral extraction and processing. They would also be seeking permission to increase the number of lorry movements up to 840 per day. So this slide just shows, this aerial photograph shows the areas. So if I can use the pointer, if it's going to work. If you can see there, that blue triangle, that's the processing area. And phases 4 and 5 are over here to the west. And as they are the remaining areas to be worked in the current planning permission. I'll just, while we're on this slide, I'll point out, although it's difficult to see, the nearest residents that have the representations we've received are from this area here, which is quite close to the processing area. So I'll touch on that later. But while we've got that slide, I just wanted to show you that. in terms of, so that's Taton Hill, Branston, as it's labelled there. Can you see the labelling, or is it a bit blurred?
Perhaps the biggest definer is the river, it's Derbyshire, Burton.
You've got it? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, in terms of comments received, and we had no technical objections, but we did have some representations. We had objections from Barton and Dunstall Parish Councils, and we'd sent out 150 neighbour letters, and we received 28 representations. And as I say, they were primarily from those residents nearest to the processing area. That's residents who live between the site and the A38. So the concerns were in terms of the quality of life and the additional noise, dust, light pollution, and due to general poor site management that they were complaining about. My observations in the previous report went through those issues, but concluded there were no clear and convincing reasons to indicate that permission should not be granted, subject to conditions. My report recommended to permit, subject to conditions, including a 3-month trial period. So the point of this report is to correct what it said which is on page 9 of the report, which says that the start time, the current permitted start time, I'd reported for mineral processing as 7 o'clock, when in actual fact it's 6 o'clock. I'd also reported that the finish time was 1 o'clock, when in actual fact it's 4 o'clock. And one of the reasons for that mistake was there are the different times for the extraction and the processing. The processing is allowed to go on longer and start earlier and go on longer. I'd join the two together, suggesting that they started at 7 in the morning and finished at 1, for example, on a Saturday. So the correct start time for processing is 6 o'clock in the morning, and finish time on a Saturday is 4 o'clock. They're the current permitted times. So the correction recommendation is that is simply to correct the report to say it was from 6. The recommendation is from 6 o'clock in the morning for processing to 10 o'clock at night, Monday to Friday, and 6 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock on a Saturday. And therefore, my recommendation today in this report is that the corrections be noted and the previous committee decision to accept the recommendation to permit, with conditions as corrected, be upheld and the decision notice now be issued. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mike. We've got, because this is just a correction, we've had no speakers against, no parish council speakers, no supporters. We have had an email from Julia Jessel, who's the local member, and I will read that out in full. And it says, with regards to the Newbold quarry application, as this is just a correction of the previous recommendation, and following receipt of a message from Mike Grundy explaining the situation, I am happy to support the application and will not be attending. This is on the condition that these revised operating times and lorry movements is for a trial period.
Chairman, if I could just quickly add, although we didn't get any representations or asked anyone to wanting to speak, I have notified the same people as we did previously about the opportunity to speak. So we've not just brought the report back to committee without advising people that this is happening. Okay, thank you.
Okay, could I have a proposer proposed by Councillor Francis, seconded by Councillor Sutherland, and we're all in agreement? Yes? Yeah. Anyone against? Anyone abstaining?
I was only going to comment, Chairman, that all the procedures have all been properly followed. Everything is absolutely correct as per the requirements of the application, and it's only an error in the report, and I think that there's no difficulty in the committee approving that, and I would move approval of the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you, David. We've had a movement from Councillor Francis on that, but appreciate that you're in line with the application, with the decision that we've all made to uphold it. Okay, thank you. And we'll move on, please, to item 4B, which is Holditch House, Holditch Road, Chesterton, Newcastle-under-Lyme, and an application by Hamptons Property Limited. Are you taking this again, Mike? Matt, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
It depends which one you've got. The one I've got, it's page 37. Has everyone managed to bring that up? Yeah. What is on the electronic page? What number is the electronic? 37? 41. Is that any good, Mike? Okay. All right, it's important we all have the notes in front of us. Right, we'll continue with that then. Matt
Yes.
Griffin, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Morning, all. This report relates to a planning application submitted by Hamptons, who are an operator of a waste and metals recycling facility, for amendments to a planning condition to allow for an extension of the hours of operation. The waste facility is located approximately 3 kilometres northwest of Newcastle-under-Lyme town centre within the village of Chesterton. So the map up there shows you the location in generality. In more detail, the site, which was brought into use in 2018, is adjacent to the Lymedale Business Park, as shown on the plan on the slide and as accompanying this report. Access to the site is via Holditch Road, which connects either to London Road or Brimbo Road, which both provide access straightforwardly onto the A34. The nearest residential properties are on Broadmeadow Court, which are predominantly bungalows for retired people. This aerial photograph shows the location of the site, mainly surrounded by commercial properties on the western, southern, eastern sides. But as I've mentioned previously, there are these properties on Broadmeadow Court, which are the closest properties to the site. Other properties to the north are just off on streets off London Road. The aerial photograph shown on this slide, submitted with the application, shows the extent of the waste facility with the large recycling and maintenance building, which is shown there. And as mentioned, the properties on Broadmeadow Court are 90 metres to the north of that building in that area there. The photograph indicates that part of the building which is used for vehicle maintenance, and the area proposed to be used at weekends for depositing waste from highway maintenance contracts is shown in the beige there and labelled. This photograph shows a view of the recycling and maintenance building from the gardens of properties on Broadmeadow Court. Note the height of the building, which is over 15 metres, and the location of doors on the north-facing elevation, which are situated between the trees shown on the slide. This photograph shows the yard area and the loading shovel that would be used to manage the deposit of waste materials delivered from highway maintenance works. And a second photograph indicates the extent of screening that would be provided for operations involving the delivery of waste, including the existing stockpiles of materials within the yard and the extent of the large recycling and maintenance building. The proposals are to extend hours as summarised on the slide and as explained on pages 38 to 40 of the report. That might be different. The proposed extension of hours is required to enable more time for the return of vehicles in the early evening on weekdays, and in relation to weekends and bank public holidays, to enable waste to be received from occasional out-of-hours highway maintenance works. Overall, the extension of hours would allow more time for maintenance of plant and vehicles. The applicant explains that the proposal would relieve the concentration of activity at the site in the early evening when the local highway network is busy, enable more efficient operations of the waste facility by allowing more time for maintenance, and provide a facility that can serve highway maintenance works that are undertaken at weekends. There are no objections to the proposal from technical consultees, and advice on conditions provided by the Council's regulation team and noise engineer are discussed in the observation section of the report. Prior to writing the report to committee, 17 representations have been received. The concerns raised include the increased traffic impact, including mud deposited on roads, noise during the extended hours, loss of guaranteed quiet time on Saturday afternoons and Sundays, increased dust and air emissions, and then reference to effect on health on the residents and failure to implement landscaping around the boundary of the site. As a result of the concerns raised by residents, a site meeting was held with the applicant involving local councillors, including the county member, and the applicant's agent provided clarification on the nature of the operations that would be carried out during the proposed extended hours. Officers have also met with local residents to view the site from Broadmeadow Court. Since publishing the report for this committee, further representations have been made by and on behalf of residents from Broadmeadow Court. Concerns remain about the potential adverse effect on residential amenity, particularly at weekends, and the residents seek assurances that planning conditions are complied with and that the site liaison committee meetings are recommenced. The first part of the observations considers whether relevant national and development plan policies and other material considerations, including the site and its surroundings, have changed significantly since the original grant of permission. It is concluded that there have been no significant material changes since the grant of the original permission in 2013 relating to the consideration of this application. There have been changes that need to be considered, however, in terms of the actual construction of the recycling building, and these are considered in the observations. The second main heading of the observations considers matters raised by consultees and in representations. A principal concern is about noise during the extended hours. A noise assessment undertaken by the applicant has been reviewed by the council's noise engineer and is found acceptable. The applicant has confirmed that the proposed extended hours for weekends and bank public holidays would be used for limited operations only. The report refers to the following safeguards to amenity. Maintenance of plant and vehicles will be carried out inside the main building with outer-facing doors closed, noting that these doors are actually a change to the approved plans for the recycling building. The receipt of waste at weekends would be occasional, and it is recommended that a condition limits the number of weekends to 26 occasions in any calendar year. In addition, it is recommended that the number of lorry movements involved with the deposit of highway maintenance waste on a Saturday afternoon, Sunday or bank public holiday should be limited to a maximum of 40. Other concerns have been raised about dust and odours, traffic and lighting, and these are also considered on the basis that the proposals would not result in an overall increase in the throughput of the site or change in the types of waste managed at the facility. It is concluded that the proposed extension of operating hours would not give rise to any materially harmful impacts subject to the existing, updated and additional recommended conditions. The third main heading of the observations considers national planning practice guidance and the need to review conditions attached to the current permission as part of the consideration of an application to amend a current permission. Updates to planning conditions are recommended to reflect details that have been approved since permission was granted, as well as to address changes to the site's operational layout which have become apparent since the waste facility was brought into use. This includes a review of the currently approved noise management plan for the site. So finally, the recommendation is to permit the variation of conditions as listed in the recommendation, including changes to condition 13 to allow extended hours of operation subject to restrictions on the nature of operations during those extended hours. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Matt. We'll move on to speaker number 1, who's the objector. Aidan Jenkins, I understand, is on Teams. Aidan, are you there? Yeah. Aidan, I think you've muted. Aidan Jenkins, are you there? And if you are there, we can't see you and your microphone's muted. No? Zach, can you help out here?
Yeah, Chair. So I do have a copy of what Mr. Jenkins wanted to say. So through you.
Can I suggest that we have the supporter while we try and get in touch with Aidan? Could we move to Michael Askew again on Teams? Michael, you're there and unmuted, hopefully.
Hopefully, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. So you've got 5 minutes as supporter.
Thank you, Chair. The nature of this proposal has been set out by your officer both verbally and in the report, who has recommended the proposal for approval. I will now amplify on why planning permission should be granted. The applicant is a well-established business within the borough and has operated this waste and metals recycling facility since it came into operation in 2018. This planning application seeks to amend condition 13 of the original planning permission in order to extend the hours of operation of the premises. An additional hour of 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. is proposed during weekdays. This would not result in an increase of throughput of waste or the number of vehicles to and from the site during the day, but would instead enable the operator to spread the extent of their activities across the day in order to relieve the concentration of activity that currently takes place at busier times between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. and which currently adds to the rush hour numbers. This additional hour would also enable extra time for maintenance and site preparation for the following working day. This proposal also seeks to extend Saturday operational hours to enable it to operate between 1 p.m. and 5 p.m, as well as to operate Sundays and bank holidays between 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. These operations are unlikely to happen every weekend of the year, but it is important the applicant has sufficient flexibility to accommodate the Highway Authority's requirements, which by their nature are difficult to predict with any accuracy. It is therefore considered that it would be overly onerous on the County Council to restrict these extended weekend opening times to take place no more than 26 times a year. It is proposed that these additional weekend hours would be utilised solely for indoor vehicle maintenance works, which would occur within the main recycling and sorting building when the doors are closed. The operations would comprise the delivery, loading and handling of waste arising from highway maintenance works undertaken by the Highway Authority. These deliveries would occur no more than 4 times an hour and would be limited to no more than 20 loads per day. Therefore, operations during this period would be restricted to specific and less intensive operations, which the County Council can restrict by planning condition. There are also wider benefits to the proposal in the form of enabling the Highway Authority to undertake wider highway maintenance works in a more efficient manner, as well as reducing the need to double handle waste arising. The purpose of extending hours is essentially to enable the site to operate in a much smoother way and to subsequently spread out the activities throughout the working day, thus improving how adjoining residents experience the operations as well as reducing activities during peak traffic periods. This planning application has received no objections from the Highway Authority, the noise engineer, the regulatory team or the EA, and therefore the proposed development is considered to be technically sound. It is acknowledged that some local residents have raised concerns about the proposal. A noise assessment has been produced to support this scheme. It confirms that extended hours of operations during the weekdays can result in only a minor perceptible change of noise impact to the nearest sensitive receptors based on the existing baseline for the additional hour. But when assessing the reduction of the activity that currently occurs between busy periods of 5 p.m. and 6 p.m, their report concludes that the scheme would not result in any perceptible increase in noise activity overall. Similarly, the assessment concludes that extended operations to Saturday afternoons and Sunday mornings would also result in no perceptible increase in noise impact. It is therefore considered that the proposal accords with the requirements of the framework and will enable the applicant to operate their premises in the most efficient manner whilst ensuring that the amenity of local residents is preserved. I therefore urge you to grant planning permission to extend the operational hours as proposed. Thank you for listening.
Michael, thank you very much. And I think we've got an update from Aidan Jenkins, who's the objector. Zach?
Yes, Chair. So he's got in touch to advise that he's having some technical issues. He can hear what we're saying, but his connection isn't ideal. But he has submitted an email to me, so through you, I'll read that out if that's okay.
Yes, please.
Okay. As a local resident and activist, I know the balance that needs to take place regarding the needs of expanding businesses and those of the community. I hope that Hamptons and others will take their community responsibilities seriously. Therefore, I, as well as many others in the community, have grave concerns over the proposed application of hours, partly due to concerns over the possibility that this is the thin end of the wedge and there will be a gradual creep of this kind of extension. Can we have council assurances that this won't be allowed? Our main concerns, particularly regarding residents of Broadmeadow Court, yet apply to the village of Chesterton as a whole, is this. Challenges around increased congestion, parts of the A34 and surrounding roads are already hotly congested. Won't this make the problem of our pothole roads worse still? Pollution. Residents of Broadmeadow report a thick layer of dust, presumably from the site, on certain days of operation. Are there assurances that our air quality will be protected at all costs? Finally, noise pollution. More wagons at increased times will disturb our sleepy village further still, on times that are meant to be restful and give us a break from the humdrum of daily life. Are there ways Hamptons can operate without disturbing the calm of Holditch and Chesterton? Many thanks for your time.
Can I thank Aidan for the representation? Please pass on that we did hear it in full, and it will be obviously on the broadcast as we go forwards. There's two things from me before we go to members. Two things from me. First of all, can I ask officers just to again confirm that Councillor Wilkes, who's the local member, has met with residents and with the applicant?
I can certainly confirm that he's met with me and represented concerns on behalf of residents, and we've met with the applicant.
Thank you. And the second question from me is, and it's sort of a recurring issue and it's something that we need to ensure happens. Is there a liaison committee? And if so, have they met? Obviously, COVID restrictions aside.
Yes, there's a liaison committee established on the back of a requirement on a legal agreement associated with the site. They have met, but clearly during the present times, then those meetings have not occurred. But that's something that we obviously want to see encouraged for them to get going again. Yeah.
Can I, as chairman, ask that if this proposal is passed, that there's some sort of not pressure, but indication or planning condition that liaison committee does meet on a regular basis, because we have had problems in that area historically in Newcastle area. Thank you. And open it up to members. John Francis.
Thank you, Chairman. I know the area very well, and Luma Road and all around that area, there's lots of businesses anyway. And the only thing that worries me about it is just round the corner, basically, is Wally's Quarry, where we've had nothing but aggro, and the EA have not actually enforced what they should have done even there. On page 45, bullet point 34, the layout for waste and maintenance operation within the recycling sorting building has been amended. Position of the doors into the building has changed to suit the amended layout. The north-facing elevation of the building is a concern to residents to the north of the site. That worries me. How are we going to monitor that those doors are not open when residents object to it? How are we going to, because we've failed with Wally's Quarry, EA's failed with Wally's Quarry, Newcastle Borough are now taking them to court on another matter with Wally's Quarry. So how are we going to enforce some of these conditions?
Chairman Allen, that one
for officers.
Just to be clear, that we'll enforce it in the same way with the resources we have for any other mineral or waste site in the county. We do monitoring visits and what have you. We have picked up that there is a difference here in terms of the way it was originally approved and what they've done now. And one of the recommendations of this report is that those doors are closed during those extra hours anyway. Yeah. And obviously then it's a matter of compliance with that. And obviously I would suggest if those residents can see those doors are open, I'm no doubt they would tell us, and obviously that would then be reminding the applicant that that's what they agreed to do, or required to do. So that's the way we'd do it. Okay. Yes, we have a regulation team that will enforce those in the same way we do any other site with the resources we have. So.
Can I ask, just for clarification, is it a recommendation or is it a planning condition that those doors are shut on the weekend?
So the recommendation is that we have planning conditions, and one of those planning conditions is that we have that those doors are closed during those extra hours.
Does that help, Councillor?
I mean, how are we monitoring what's going on that site as far as waste management goes then, Mike? What's the facility to check that the items that are in that waste are legally applied, and going back to what's happened around the corner, that the monitoring is there 100%?
Okay, so to be clear what this application is about, and that's what we're dealing with today, this is construction, this is road maintenance waste. So this is our highways digging trenches and digging soil and tarmac and stone and taking it there to deposit, rather than taking it somewhere else and then having to take it there on a weekday, for example. So we know the nature of the waste. The Environment Agency that are responsible for the permitting of the site, and that looks at the detail, which is the same as the Wally's Quarry situation. They look at the detail, the waste. They're the experts in that regard.
So basically it's just just planings off the road, isn't it, really, that we're talking about here, as much as anything else.
The current permission allows certain waste types, and part of this permission is to do with scrap metal. That's a separate part of the operation. The other part is construction demolition waste, and again the current permission specifies what those waste types are. So from a planning point of view, they're the broad categories. The Environment Agency's permit look at the details of that. Okay.
Okay. Any other members wish to speak? Jill?
Thank you, Chair. Just an observation, really. I'm looking at the aerial photograph. I can see broad meadow. It's not actually on the main road, it's set back. And having been someone who's lived on a main road and then recently just moved around the corner, the difference is absolutely dramatic. So my question is, these houses, I would like to know how far these houses are from the main road. And also, I've noticed at the rear of the properties there's a piece of open land which looks to be a playing field, and I'm not quite sure if I can see that there's a football pitch marked out there. So what kind of activities take part on that land? Is the football pitch, has that been taken into account? And also, I'm looking at the screening. I think that the activities is going on the other side of the vehicles maintenance building, which, you know, I feel that the screening is quite good. So could you just answer me the question about how far they are from the main road and what goes on the field, please? Thank you.
Yes. So this is this slide replicates what you've got in the report, and at the top there you can see the properties that are nearest to the facility, and obviously their gardens have a view towards the recycling building. From the main London road, they're probably set back. I've not actually measured that distance, but I'd guess, having driven around there, it's probably 100 metres away from the main road there. So that I wouldn't have thought that their amenities are affected by the traffic on the London road. Bearing in mind, traffic associated with this facility won't use that section of London Road anyway. But the other question you raise is then the use of the sports pitch. Well, I believe it's owned by the Borough Council, and it's there available for football use. So no objection from the borough, well, no response from the borough, but clearly they didn't take the opportunity to object. And then in terms of the third question was about the nature of the use. Well, there's a layout plan that is supposed to indicate the various metal recycling activities, the sorting that they do, and recycling of skip wastes that come in. Bear in mind the condition does say that this isn't a facility that deals with putrescible waste, you know, obviously we've got that all sort of wrapped up in the planning conditions. There's various noise management plans, dust management plans, and also the other aspect to bear in mind is that the site is subject to an environmental permit, so the Environment Agency are also there in terms of their regulation.
Jill, does that answer your questions?
Just briefly, I'm just thinking if there's a sports field and it's got a football pitch, it's normally activities on a Saturday anyway, so if the hours are extended and there were sports on there, it would offset some, if there was any noise, it would be offset by that. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Richard Cox.
Thank you, Chairman. Picking up what Jill has just said, I do have an issue in terms of the no comment from the Borough Council in terms of the use of the open space there as a football pitch, like I've written down air quality, and I think it's extremely important that the air quality here, not just for the residents in their back gardens, but obviously in terms of activities of football, through whatever age group, if there is higher of the pitches there that it is used. I'm putting the two together. Dust and sporting activity does not go hand in hand. And I'm concerned that not enough attention has been made maybe to that side of it, and that further investigation may be required. Now that could possibly come through obviously what the conditions are set out in covering air quality going forward, because a lot of asthma is on the increase, as we well know. It doesn't stop you from playing sport, but there will be a double impact if there's a lot of dust on a certain day. It's particularly if it's slightly windy or something of that nature, that you're then going to create an issue that the two, as I said before, do not go hand in hand. You've got a problem. And I think this area is as already alluded to by John Francis, you know, it seems to be that the area is blighted by environmental issues that don't seem to be taken control of. And I'm just concerned with the increased hours in operation. The weekends now are fully operational, because Sunday, you know, it's half a day. What does it give you then half a day to of the whole weekend? You know, we don't want to use it, but it's a fact. The pandemic has created new ways of life, and probably one of those ways of life is making sure that your windows are open, because that's the advice that if COVID will be here for a very long time, so we have to learn and live with it. But to live with it, we have to operate with different ways of doing it, and that means windows shut, etc., etc., no activities in back gardens. I just think when you look at it, the increased hours, whilst we've got an operation here in itself, increased operation hours, the way that it's coming forward, is not conducive to a good life. I just can't see how the residents and activities on that field can actually be helped. So, I mean, I'm mindful to think that if there was a reason, I'm not happy with this at all, because I don't think there's not enough has been investigated and to get a response of what activities are on that field. That's my input, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Could I ask Councillor Sutherland, you've asked to speak. Is it on the same subject? Would you like to go before the officers do a response, please?
Thank you, Chair, and I appreciate that. I'll try not to duplicate what's been said, because I endorse the concerns for Sunday in particular, because that's not the day of rest. Forget that. We have a local pitch where I live in Rugeley, and there's a Sunday football club. So that for me, what's been said resonates. Chairman, what I think I would like to do is to fully endorse what you said about the liaison committee, but I would like to make sure that we get into written into an agreement that just because of COVID, that doesn't stop virtual. And again, outside of this, but an experience that I've had, well, we can't meet because it's COVID. Well, yes, we can. Why can't we have virtual meetings? And people are attuned to that now. So I would like something with your support and the committee's support written into the actual conditions that they are offered virtual support, because I think the friction, if there's going to be any, and concerns will probably centre around the Sunday working. Thank you, Chair.
You can take this, Mike.
I'll pick up some of those points as best I can. I think it's important to remember here that this is the recommendation is for 26 weeks in the year, not every weekend. It's also important to remember that this is limited in terms of the number of vehicle loads brought to the site, and it's also important to remember that those loads are simply depositing the waste in an area that's already got permission for that waste to be deposited on other days in the week, and that there's no processing of that waste. So, and obviously it's particularly the processing of that waste, given the nature of it, could be the thing that generates the most dust and has the risk associated with it, I'd suggest. It's also important to remember there is already a dust management plan in place, and that obviously then it's important that that dust management plan is applied properly, and that's picking up on the point about the liaison committee, that any issues that may arise can be fed through that and addressed quickly. I think on the COVID point, well, we're all in a meeting room together now. That issue is not as significant as it recently was. I think what I was saying to Matt earlier, picking up on the suggestion that we get the applicant to actually get those liaison meetings going again, is we put that as a strong informative from the committee that that's something they should do, and therefore our regulation team could pick up on that as well and make sure that happens. I think that would be the best thing for us to do in terms of that sense. It gets that message across from the committee that that's an important thing that happens, and that would then police some of these things. As I say, just recapping that they've already got permission to take that type of waste in. There's already dust management in place and noise management in place. Yes, they have to be, those provisions have to be applied and enforced if necessary, and that liaison committee is there to make sure there is, if there are issues, that's fed back and properly addressed. I hope that helps. I also recall when we first dealt with this application, there is air quality management goes on by the Borough Council in this area because of the traffic around and about and what have you. So I know air quality was an issue originally when we dealt with this application, which is why we've got dust management plans and things like that in place. So I hope that's of some help.
Can I ask the committee, and I think that's a really excellent suggestion, are you happy for officers to put a covering letter to go with the decision, if it's agreed by you as a committee, to cover the points that have just been mentioned, and the very relevant points, and all particularly relevant in that area with the problems that are occurring? And the second thing is, and again this is slightly off the mark, do we also send that letter to Newcastle Borough Council as well? Copy them in. Okay, so could I ask you on the side, Mike, to put a letter together and just circulate it around the committee first? John?
Yeah, just a quickie. In my division, I've got a large industrial site, and there's always been a lot of complaints because the village is close to it. And the liaison committee within the specific company I'm talking about that I go to hasn't met for a couple of years, and Mike's suggestion on the virtual thing is absolutely spot on. So yeah, I think the liaison committee will obviate a lot of problems with this, because it has done in my area, I must admit.
Mike, can I pass that on to you?
Yeah, I mean, and just to say on the letter front, what we would normally do in this situation, in fact, we've done it recently with the Hints Quarry, where this issue with the last committee with Hints Quarry, where, again, the liaison committee hadn't really been active, and it was getting that message across. And the proposal, again, there was to put it on the informative, and just so members realise, that informative goes with the planning permission. It's on the back of the end of the planning permission. We have that informative. So there's a permanent record with the decision. I think that's, rather than it being a separate letter, I think that's, in a way, because it stays with the planning permission as a reminder, if that's okay. Just one thing to pick up, though. Colleague Debbie Morgan's been in touch to suggest that the playing field that we've been referring to might actually be owned by the County Council in association with Churchfields Primary School. So it might actually be a school primary playing field, which obviously is only used during the week. So that may be wrong. We may have misled you on that one initially. So thanks to Debbie for getting in touch with me and correcting us on that one. Debbie's our regulation manager and is familiar with some of the issues around this site. So
Can I be slightly sort of strong on this as chair and say that I think with regard to the problems that there are at the moment in that area, and to reassure residents that it goes as the informative with the planning application, but a separate letter and a letter to the Borough Council saying that we're concerned about it goes out as well from this committee.
I think you've missed the point I've just made. That land is owned by the county council. It's part of the school it's a primary school field, so it's not a football field used by the Borough Council.
Yeah, totally get that.
Okay.
But it's the whole let's just say a cumulative effect of waste and waste processing in that area has obviously caused concerns for residents in the recent past.
I understand, but obviously it's the county council's issuing the planning permission. We've got to enforce that. So it's obviously it's beholden on us to enforce the planning permission. The Borough Council have a role in terms of environmental health and general issues around that nuisance, which is a separate legislation, regulations, and that's a matter for them. So if that's the case, but initially it's our responsibility in this instance. Obviously, the Environment Agency have their role as well in terms of regulating the permit. You know, all those issues we're aware of in other situations as well. So there's lots of different agencies involved when there are issues. Okay.
So, are we sending a separate letter or not?
If members wish us to do so, then fine, as long as we're clear what we'll see. And yeah.
So we've got a proposal to the chair. Are we all in agreement with that, really? Yeah. Okay. So I'll liaise with you on that, Mike. Getting back to the matter in hand, which is the planning application we've got in front of us, which is obviously for particularly about recycling materials being delivered from the highways, from our highways actually. Have we got a proposal? Yes, I've got a proposal. Microphone. Could you put your microphone on and say that again, please, John?
I propose to move it as is, subject to the letters going out and that the liaison committee is reformed. And I think Mike's just summed it up quite eloquently, what we can do with this. So I'll move it, Chairman.
Have I got a seconder? Yeah, David Smith. Okay, and do members agree with that or disagree? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you all very much. We now move on to the end of the meeting. I understand there's no private matters that we need to discuss. Can I thank all of the members, all of the officers and the officers who are not here who've put the reports together, and also members of the public who have given their time this morning to make representations. So I think that's it. Are we happy, Mike? Yep. Happy, John? Yes. Okay, well, we'll close the meeting. Thank you all very much.